Smoky Mountain Magic, a novel by Horace Kephart. Chapter 1. A giant of a man lay flat on the cabin floor playing solitaire with a scuffed and grimy deck of cards. Up to the waist he was wet from wading trout streams. His sodden shoes were draining upside down on the porch. He sprawled on the floor like a schoolboy, one leg bent upward from the knee, his bare toes wriggling. Little pools of water dripped from him as he played. There was sound of bustling in the kitchenelle. His wife called to him from beyond the open doorway, "Tom, you come and get me some wood." Tom silently stacked a red jack on a black queen. "Oh, Tom, can't now, I'm busy. You come right along. Be still, I'm breaking the bank. Oh, Tom, I got to scour the house today." "What fer?" "What, you know the preacher man is visiting folks all up and down the creek. He's liable to drop in on us any time." "Well, my dog don't bite." "Tom, I'd be ashamed. What you reckon he'd think, seeing his house looking like a hen run?" "Him? He'd think, hallelujah, chicken dinner." "You quit your deviling and get me some wood." "I put a handle in that axe just to fit you, Sylvie." "'Tain't no use keeping a dog and doing your own barking," retorted Sylvia. "You get busy." "Am busy. Dod rot them black yards. Get you a fence rail." "I say fence rail. You burnt all the nigh ones your own self on wet mornings. You're so improviding. Now, where'd you get that mouthful? Schoolmarm been here?" "Improviding." "Tom," called the woman plaintively, "the stove'll be plumb out." "Be still, I'm making money." "All right, Mr. Bank Robber, cold bread and stale coffee'll be your portion." Long silence in the front room. Then Tom began talking to himself, or pretending to do so, but loud enough for his words to carry all over the place. "My wife casts up laziness to me sometimes, but I don't mind, for it's so. I'm so improviding that I ain't laid up a jug of liquor for a rainy day. 10 on 9. Red 8. Come, Black 7. Whew, there it is." Little Margaret had been following her mother about the kitchen, seeking to help her with baby imitativeness. Now she came toddling into the living room. She frowned upon the prostrate man and shook an admonitory finger at him like an old woman. "Daddy," she bade, "you det some wood." Big Tom dropped the cards, caught the child in his great brown hands, tossed and tousled her till she pealed with glee, playfully spanked her, kissed the corn-colored curls, and set her down. Then he rose ponderously and went into the kitchen. "Damn these wash days and scour days," he complained. "A woman's always finding something to do that a man can't see no sense in." He seized his wife by the waist, twirled her around, lifted her level with his 6'2", and gave her a loud smack on the lips. The astonished woman turned red in the face. It was the first time Tom had kissed her, and Lord of mercy only knows when. "What you blushing for, Sylvie? Lots of gals nowadays has to paint their faces to look that way." "Oh, you great big ruffian trifling thing," laughed his wife. "If you don't get a soon shave, you'll have to be scalded like a pig to get the bristles off. Now go along, you, and see you cut enough wood to last a time." Strong emphasis on the last word made it mean a long time, a time worth reckoning. Tom obediently put on his shoes and went out to the backyard. A heavy double-bitted axe lay across the chopping block. Its edge was bright from recent grinding. In a turn of devilment, Tom picked up the dangerous tool by the very tip of its handle, grasping only a couple of inches of the wood between his thumb and two bent fingers. So, holding the helve by the least possible grip, he extended his arm to full length, the axe pointing forward like an outthrust sword. Then slowly, to prove his strength, he bent his wrist toward him and tipped back the axe. Steadily, perilously, the heavy blade moved toward his upturned face in the arc of a circle. The keen, bright edge approached his lips, but still his arm was held rigid and only slightly bent. Sylvia screamed, "Tom, my God, what you doing? Tom, you'll split your head wide open." Tom smilingly let the axe drop nearer, till he kissed its razor edge. Then, deliberately, he swung the heavy tool backward in its arc, flourished it in salute, and said, "I allers kiss the bit after kissing a woman. 'Tain't so sharp as her tongue is sometimes, and I got to keep my narve up so's I don't get hacked." He swung the axe over his shoulder and stepped forth to do his chore. "Oh, Tom!" Sylvia ran after him, threw her arms around his brawny neck, drew him back, and snuggled her soft cheek against his bristly jowl. Little Margaret laughed and danced about them. Away then went Tom, whistling up his dog. Down below the house was an old field, worn out, given over to sedge, briars, and sassafras bushes. Years ago, it had been cleared for corn by the first settler in this wilderness. He, instead of felling and logging the trees, had saved time and toil by simply deadening them, girdling the trunks with axe cuts through the sapwood all around. They died. The bark shed off, and they stood gaunt in the spectral ugliness of skinned and weathered boles. One tenant after another, as time went by, had cut some of them down for firewood. Only 3 or 4 remained of all that skeleton host, and there they stood, white and air-seasoned and bone-hard to the core. Tom strode along, singing in a hearty treble. "When fust I married, I lived on spill corn and worked like the devil the livelong day. My wife did the cooking for Wild Bill Rathborn. They took it in head they's going to run away." He cast a contemptuous glance over the stony field. "Never be worth a cuss to raise or graze on," he thought. "My mule Jabo has to take to the lin sprouts and bushes in the woods to pick a living." He scanned the heavily timbered ridge that rose steeply from the water's edge on the far side of the creek. "Could make a clearing yonder, I reckon, but shucks, it's too straight up and down to plow." Me and Sylvie'd have to hoe it on our knees. 2-3-year-old spindly corn, and by then the soil will all be washed out into the creek. All these furback Smokies is good for is turkey and pheasant, coon and mink, wildcat and bear. I can make more a hunting and trapping than by trying to raise crop where there's more rocks than dirt. He skipped a verse of his ballad and sang. Another man killed on Sourwood Mountain, shot him when the chickens was crowing for day, and that was the last of Wild Bill Rathburn. Tell them boys they'd better stay away. Well, he continued soliloquizing, anyhow, this is sure a joyful place to live and breathe in. God never made purtier woods or cooler waters than we got right here in the Smoky Mountains. And it's 5 miles to the nice mean neighbor. They found Wild Bill on Sourwood Mountain, laying on his back with his head agin a tree, with a 44 Colts and a Smith & Wesson. Everybody says they belong to me. I got a woman on Sourwood Mountain. She's been the cause of the killing of 3, but I'm going to stay on Sourwood Mountain, though they swear by the devil they're going to get me. Tom sang with the carefree abandon of one who celebrates some other fellow's trouble. Had it been his own, he would have kept his mouth shut. He felled one of the chestnut trees. It crashed to the ground, the slender top snapping into several pieces. The unbroken trunk made a log like a telegraph pole, 30 feet long, a foot thick at the butt, and tapering to 9 inches at the upper end. Tom lifted the small end, got his shoulder under it, pushed forward, heaving the log higher, and so worked along until the center of gravity was on his shoulder. Then he swung the butt clear from the ground and strode off, carrying his axe in his left hand. Uphill he went to the house, bearing at one load 1/4 of a ton of firewood. Sylvia greeted him with mild reproof. "You'll bust your back doing that some day, leetle feller." "Huh," snorted Tom. "I'm too active to plow and too stout to split rails, so this is the least I'm allowed to trifle with." Mischievously his wife answered, "Dearie me, if you're so gaily as all that, do you allow it would strain you to hit me with the scouring when you've cut some wood?" Tom made a wry face. "Doctor said lye soap suds would crack my leetle tender feet and dirt would get in and pison me. I've obleeged to be plumb keerful not to get damp in airy water dingier than trout fish swim in." Tom made the chips fly. Skilled axeman that he was, he piled up enough stove wood in 20 minutes to last a week. Then under the great iron wash pot in the yard, he laid kindling and knots. He filled the pot with water from the spring branch and quickly had a fire going under it. Nor did he return to his card game, but hung around until the water was steaming hot, then filled a bucket, took off his shoes, seized a stubby old broom, and silently went to work scrubbing the living room floor. Sylvia stared as if the world were coming to an end. "Sights and wonders!" she exclaimed. Marchie, your pappy must be under downright conviction of sin. Margaret, half sensing the miraculous turn of affairs, crossed her hands upon her chubby waist and sighed like a little old dame in church. Sylvia scoured pots and pans, tidied up the kitchen, swept the hard, bare earth around the house, and was ready for finishing touches in the living room by the time Tom was through scrubbing. "Thar," exclaimed Tom as he lit his pipe. "I'm to rest my bones for a spell or two." "Poor folks has a poor way," said Sylvia, "but there ain't no excuse for a dirty house. Wished we had money to buy a few purties for the fireboard and some colored pictures to hang on the wall." "Sylvie," said Tom, "they's purtier pictures framed in our open doorway than every rich man has on his walls. And iron keep changing with sunshine and shadders and storms, so's the body never gets tired looking at 'em." Sylvia stepped to the front doorway as though to enjoy the scenery, but really to hide a surge of emotion that might betray itself in her face. She looked out over the sparse pasture, the roaring creek on the farther side, the steep wooded mountains that everywhere walled in their little cove. Plaintively she answered, "I ain't a-complaining none, but Tom, honey, I do wisht you'd get something better to do than just running trespassers off from the company's property and fighting fires the trifling scoundrels sets in the woods. You're so big and strong. It ain't right us to drag around this way looked down on as keerless folks with Margie growing up to be a big gal afore we know it." Sylvia's under lip quivered, and she had to fight back the tears. Tom looked hard at the fireplace and at the bare log wall of their humble home. He, too, fought something back. His face turned one under its coat of tan. Long he sat there, humped on a stubby little splint-bottomed chair, puffing his pipe and saying nothing. At last he answered gently, "I reckon you're lonesome in this way back far-off place, but a body's bound to stand up for its home place, even if 'tain't more'n a log pen with a roof over. And there's such thing as loyalty. Why, I believe if I was in hell I'd brag about the country." Sylvia laughed. With a quick rebound of spirits, she turned and slipped into Tom's lap. She snuggled to him, saying, "Wherever you bide, Tom, I'll be there too, a-bragging with you." "Don't you get downcast, gal," said he bravely. "I've got plans. The day's coming when there'll be developments here. Then there'll be plenty for me to do. I stand well with the company, and they've as good as promised to make me a foreman. That'll be long before Margie's growed up. You just wait and see." End of chapter.